Hello, and welcome to the Let's Talk Transformation podcasts. In this episode, we will be looking at the changing world of business and the leadership that's necessary to get there. I'm delighted to welcome Rick Yvanovich, CEO and founder of TRG International and author of Business as Unusual. Rick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Susie.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, before we start, I'd like to share you a core belief that I hold quite dear. I believe that we all have the potential to be architects of change. So in an era, in this time that we have, in this business as unusual time that we have, which has been defined by constant change, constant transformation, black swans, you name it. Our task is not just to keep up and keep our head above the water, but to actively shape our path forward.
Absolutely.
So look at my past from stacking shelves and learning the ropes of people management as a trainee in a supermarket to immersing myself in the precise world of accounting. And later navigating the constantly sort of evolving landscapes of tech. I turned into a techie and humans. So my own transformation, my own story sort of demonstrates the power of this continuous learning and the significant impact each one of us can make. So every day our actions, big or small, shape our future. And as I hope, as we discuss about today, I want everyone listening to remember this. You are your brand, and every decision you make is part of your unique story that you are crafting for yourself. How you react, how you adapt, how you innovate in the face of change and all this stuff that's happening in the world today will define your story and your legacy. And this belief, which is sort of inspiring each of us to aim for that consistently higher achievement, is the cornerstone of my work. It's actually my life purpose. So as we dive into this conversation today, let's not just think about adapting to change or reacting to change, but about how we can define it. After all, when we embrace our unique qualities, and we all have them, and we strive for that personal growth, we are not just a participant, we're not just a passenger, but we're a catalyst in our ever-changing world, which is a business as unusual world. So let's get started, Susie.
Yeah, and thank you for that. It's a great lead into lots of things I wanted to unpack. And if I take business as unusual, because following the pandemic, we changed a lot of the way we work, a lot of the way we think about why we work, how we work, to come back to your purpose discussion, which is picked up, of course, throughout your book, but also the idea of legacy and why am I doing what I'm doing? And I love the fact that it's unusual. You say about the new normal, which got coined as a phrase, which doesn't really ring true for me. And I found that in your book it's not new normal. Nothing's normal about it. In fact, it's unusual. And the way that companies are functioning and motivating their people is unusual compared to beforehand. And the way that people want to be motivated, I would even be bold enough to say, is also maybe unusual to what the industrial age brought us as a paradigm and leadership paradigm. And which brings me to something I really liked, which is eclectic leadership. You talk about eclectic leadership. And I want to start there, Rick, because this idea of eclectic yet connected, simple yet complex, and the polarities of, unique individual difference, but we still need to motivate each other and do something bigger than us. So in your book, you use the castle as a metaphor for this. And we find a lot of what you've just said in the structure of a castle and different towers and everything else. But before we do, can I ask you about your inspiration for that? Why a castle? And can you tell us a little bit more about the Bow Castle? I'm going to call business as unusual Bow from now on, so that it does, otherwise it's a bit tongue-tying.
Okay, thanks for that opening question. It's a big one.
Yeah, I only do big questions.
So there's sort of two or three things there, like why a castle, and this eclectic word which you like. So you want to know about that, and what does this whole castle metaphor mean anyway?
Yeah.
So I'll sort of do it in that order. So why a castle? Quite simple. I like castles.
Okay, next.
I like them. Kings, queens, knights, towers, mages, stone walls, all that kind of stuff. I love it. Yes, I love the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah,
yes, I like Harry Potter as well.
Me too.
So yeah, castles. And, it's something that, I don't know, it's a structure that each of us have an idea about. And since we're all different, we all have different ideas, and so when I talk about a castle, people know what I'm talking about, a castle.
Yeah.
Because that's really where it comes from. So let me talk a little bit about that eclectic thing before I dive into and dissect all the different bits of the castle anyway. So where did the eclectic bit come from? Didn't come from me. A few years back, I was actually applying for a board position, and they went and asked me for a CV. I haven't written a CV for about 3 decades or more.
I get that.
So I thought, whoa, okay. I reached out into my network and I said, can someone help me? And can someone do it like professionally? And I found someone who that's what they do. And I explained my background from supermarkets to defense manufacturing to IT, all sorts of things.
Yeah. So your eclectic background.
That's a bit eclectic.
All right.
Okay. Well, I like that. That's stuck. I'm going to hold on to that. So, what? Yes, I have an eclectic. I'm an eclectic experience. And I said I have an eclectic leadership style. So, if I was being, in the book, what does it really mean if it needs to sound a little bit more intelligent, shall we say, rather than just something that a CV writer wrote me. And he's a really good guy, actually, by the way. It's, that eclectic leadership style. It's a leadership style that blends. It's a blend of various theories, various styles, various approaches. Eclectic leaders isn't someone who's bound by one particular model, but has adapted different strategies depending on what the situation is. It's contextual, what the team needs, maybe what the organization needs, or what Bao is throwing at us, what COVID had to do, what it did to us. And it's also linked to their personal strengths and experiences. So it's flexibility, it's adaptability. It means the person is capable of leveraging the strengths of the different types of leadership. And if we go through the list of what they have been in the recent few decades, so transformational leadership, transactional leadership, servant leadership, autocratic, democratic, you name the style, is been there for the last 100 years or whatever. So that eclectic leader is open to them all, to learning them all, and is not really thinking that one size fits all, which is why it's a blend. So ultimately, what the person's doing is they're going to pick the most effective strategy, the most effective tool from a whole variety of styles. So it's like they've got a big toolbox. So in summary, I'm old. Okay, I'm older, mature. Okay,
More experienced.
Stuff.
More experienced.
I've learned a lot of stuff. I know a lot of models. I've got this huge toolbox, and I don't just see everything. I don't just have a hammer and everything's a nail. I've got a whole toolbox of stuff. Okay, and that's what I call eclectic leadership. But more importantly, wouldn't it be great? Oh, I think it would have been greater if I had all these tools decades ago.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about this.
Okay, so again, for listeners, if I had known that they were that important, I would have acquired them a lot earlier. So what I've tried to do in the book is put a load of them in there, a lot of different thoughts and tools and models, and you can pick and choose what you want. Try them. In one section, I might mention 3, 4, 5 different things. Try them all. Throw the ones away that you don't like, embrace the ones that you do, add them together, improve them.
Create the model that works for you and everything else.
Absolutely. Okay,
Rick,
the castle.
Just before we go to the castle, Rick, do you think that the fact that you have had a very eclectic career and done lots of different things in different places, completely different sort of industries, do you think that that's had an influence on the way you define or the way you view leadership and eclectic leadership?
Yes, I think so. I mean, arguably, one could say that if you only worked in one industry, you only have the one perspective.
Exactly.
It's a bit like working for one company for your whole life.
Yeah.
And maybe certain industries have more stereotypical type of leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, since I've worked all over the shop, as it were, they're very, very different from each other. They really are. It takes a certain type of person to go into a certain industry and want to be a leader of that. So the leaders I've met, the managers I worked under, in all these different industries, has just shown me, it's different perspectives, and it's just soak it all in, soak it all in, and I'm going to pick and choose the ones that I want that suit me.
And I like that, because we're back to choice. And I loved what you said at the beginning. We are choice. Agents of our own life. We are. We always have a choice. Even in COVID, we had choices. We just couldn't choose for COVID not to happen, but we had choices within those constraints. So, so take us to the castle. Tell us about the castle.
Okay, the castle metaphor, the castle analogy, whatever you want to call it. So I said I like castles. I'm a Brit as well. I'm a Brit, by the way. Okay, so let's go back to history. Okay, in England, there was an English judge, called Sir Edward Coke. This is going back to, I don't know, some centuries ago, who said, the house of everyone is to him as his castle and fortress, as well as for defense against injury and violence, as for his repose, which in modern day English really means a man's home is his castle.
Thank you for that.
All right, simple, right? So, I know that that's I'd say that's more of a Brit thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what does a castle really symbolize? Well, it symbolizes many things: home, safety, sanctuary, refuge, sanctity, structure, strong foundations, nobility of character and mind, worthiness, honor, respect, aspirations, community, impact, and legacy. Okay, so in the castle and the Bow book, we have 8 structures. Okay, so I'll name each of them one by one and what they each represent. Okay, now it's a metaphor. I've taken the liberty to merge multiple historical castle building concepts. So any castle experts out there, sorry.
So I will be picking you up on that. I'm not a castle expert.
so before you say that's wrong, okay, I'm taking a bit of poetic license here. Good. So let's start off with the innermost structure of the castle, which is its strongest and it's your stronghold. It's called the inner keep. Okay, and in a castle, it's innermost, it's internal, it's inside of you. Okay, now in the castle metaphor in the book, we have 4 towers in the keep. The first I call the Tower of Purpose, and this represents your values, your life purpose, your goals, and what you mentioned before, your legacy. Because it's like your compass, your North Star, people call it like that. So I imagine this very tall tower, which you can see, even if you're outside the castle, you can see from miles away. Oh, there it is, and, you can help orientate yourself. Okay, so that's the first tower. The next tower is I call the Tower of Life Force. And this represents how you manage your herbs. I use the acronym herbs.
I liked the acronym herbs.
Your health, your energy, your rest, your balance, and your stress. So that's the second tower.
Sounds simple.
It sounds simple. It's not. That's another important tower. Okay. The third tower is the Tower of Mind. Okay. And this is this represents how you show up, your habits, your behaviors, and your Kaizen, which I personally interpret as lifelong learning and growth. And finally, the Tower of Self, and there are 4 selves: self-confidence, self-efficacy, self-worth or self-value, and self-motivation. So those 4 towers form the inner keep. So if we can imagine a tower, imagine a castle, and this inner keep is that structure right in the middle with 4 towers, and they're all connected. So they actually all support each other. Okay, they all support each other. There's going back to the book again. There's something I said that I used something from the sort of Alexander Dumas, the 3 Musketeers. Yes. One for all and all for one. So I see that very much those 4 towers working together, as a very, very strong structure. Okay. So moving on. Now in French, okay, you're in France. The word, and I'm going to pronounce it very badly, donjon, means an inner tower in a castle, and it was originally used in the English language interchangeably with keep. I mean, we do that. Brits, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Destroy other people's language. So we'll take that donjon and we'll call it something else. We'll call it keep. Okay, and from I think it was about the 14th century, the English word dungeon started appearing and was referred to as the underground prison in a castle, and it's usually underneath the inner keep. So the 5th structure in my castle is the dungeon, and it's underneath the inner keep. And to me, it represents coaching. Okay.
Yeah, I found that fascinating.
You go, why?
Dungeon coaching, what is that?
Yeah, because we may need to inflict some pain when we're coaching, because growth can only occur when you're being stretched beyond your comfort zone. So stretching, dungeon, on the rack, so you're being stretched. Okay, so there's a bit of pain there. No, I don't actually put people on rack, and I don't actually torture them, but it's just another analogy. And so, are you prepared to have some dungeon coaching? Which means we really have to have a very, very strong trust, bond of trust between us, because I'm going to sort of lovingly press your buttons and I'm going to inflict some pain. There's some things that you might not want to talk about, you're in avoidance in, and that is going to be a raw nerve that I'm going to touch.
Deeper questions, isn't it?
Touch deeper questions, and you're going to have to stretch yourself. It's going to be quite, painful for some people. It can be, but it's not my default way of coaching. It's part of a journey. We do normal coaching before we get that deep.
Okay, so for those listening, Rick also does normal coaching, not just dungeon coaching.
I'm a nice person, really. Okay. Now that was the inner keep, and beneath the inner keep, now around that in a castle, it's an area called the bailey, and in our castle, the bailey can expand. So the castle walls expand as we foray beyond them, extending our domain, and as the bailey buildings grow. And the bailey consists of 3 buildings. The first one I call the Great Hall, which represents community, culture, and leadership. It's where, in the olden days, medieval times, the Great Hall is where, the king of the castle, queen of the castle, lords of the castle would entertain. They'd bring in, their followers, their villagers, their friends, they come to visit. Okay, and so that's where they forge community, where they forge connections, where they do their business. But it's also where they shape and display their culture, and their leadership. Okay, the next the next building is the stables, which represents looking forward, transforming, and searching for satisfaction. So the stables, horses. Jump on your horse, get out of your castle, go out into the distance, go foraging, go searching, go further, expand your domain, look for something. Okay. And one of the analogies I'm using is searching for satisfaction. Okay, because a lot of us aren't really satisfied, and especially now with this COVID or post-COVID or whatever it's called these days.
Unusual,
we're still, we're still not quite right. We don't feel quite right. Okay, and finally, the last building is the treasury, which represents your finances, which comprise your income and your net worth. Okay, so building your castle in the shape that you want it, helps you see which areas of your life you need to focus on to maintain balance and fulfill your life purpose and your legacy. Okay?
Yeah.
And so it goes back to, you need to architect a change, and you've got to build your castle in the shape and size that you want. It's your castle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? So just imagine your castle. You know, what would it look like for you?
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's interesting to look at, because you're automatically, and we come back to things around innovation and mindset, you're automatically in your biases to all the castles you've ever seen, which don't all look the same, but you know, they're more or less standard to the one I would see myself building if it was my castle. So it's a very interesting question.
It's like building your own home, isn't it? It just happens to be a castle, you know, like think big.
Yeah. Multiply the number of towers and make it collective and that type of thing. Yeah. But I would like to come back to the importance of the inner keep and the formula that you use of the know and the go. So, you know, when you say be yourself, but always your better self, you talk about the know and the go. Can you just explain that a little bit more about what's behind the know and the go? Because I think it's really, really linked to what you've said when we first came on the podcast, which is you are your own agent of change. And therefore you build your own castle and you decide what it looks like and how you do it.
Great question. So that be yourself, but always your better self, the know and the go. That's is really talking about the Tower of Self. Was from that chapter, which has 4 selves. I mentioned that before: the self-confidence, the self-efficacy, the self-worth, self-value, and the self-motivation. Okay. Now, the know relates to 3 of them. That's the self-confidence, the self-efficacy, the self-worth, self-value. So why is that? Yeah. Well, so
that was my question.
I was answering the question before you asked it. Yeah? Or asking the question before you asked it. Self-confidence is knowing, there's the know, and trusting in yourself and your abilities. So there's the know. That's why it's a no. Self-efficacy is believing in your own abilities to succeed. So that belief, that's again based on knowing. Okay. And the self-worth and self-value is also believing you are worthy of success and that you bring value to the world. So they're all no. They're all 3 of them are no's. You know it, you believe it. Okay, that's the no. Which only leaves us one more of the selves, which is the go. That's self-motivation or motivation. Now, people talk about motivation and self-motivation. I'm saying that the Tower is about a self-motivation rather than motivation, because they're subtly different. Okay. So I personally define motivation as the reason humans do things. Okay. And I define self-motivation as that internal force inside of us that drives us to do something. Okay. So when you got that internal force, you're going to do it. Yeah. If you don't have that internal force, you ain't going to do it. So that's why it's a go. It's an action. Okay. And I love the fact that's where it's coming from. Yeah.
Thank you. And I love the fact, if we step a chapter before that, and the Tower of the Mind, you look at Kaizen, and you know, you've already said it was about growth mindset and lifelong learning. And you know, as a lean expert, a former lean expert, I'm massively into Kaizen, partly for the mindset that's behind it. And also, you know, to pick up what you were talking about, coming from a place of abundance and not scarcity. So I'm not sure if it's self-worth, I'm not sure if I'm worth it. If I come from what I call self-unfoldment as opposed to self-improvement, and I say, okay, I'm not deficient, I'm starting whole just as I am, and I'm from a place of abundance, how much further can I go and build on my strengths, which is essentially what I'm reading into your self-motivation. So if I've got that self-motivation, I will. So for me, Kaizen is ultimately an infinite game. Therefore, if I look at what you talk about, Simon Sinek's, but also you, Rick, and your thought leadership on that, on what Kaizen brings to the Tower of the Mind, let's put it that way. Can you extrapolate a little bit more on why Kaizen and and what it brings to the tower of the mind, and particularly the habits it creates. Because having motivation is one thing, creating a system for the castle to stay upright, let's put it that way, is different, isn't it?
Okay, great question. So, okay, Kaizen, let's go back to Kaizen. So Kaizen, as we know, is Japanese for change for good, which I did, as I said before, interpret this as meaning something slightly different. So the way that I look at it is nothing is perfect. Okay, thus with Kaizen, we have to embrace and commit never-ending, lifelong improvement of ourselves and all that we do. Okay, so it's not just, learn something, which is self-improvement. It's improve on what we know, and also maybe process, in a work context, processes that we are following. They're not static.
No,
it's not, we don't do, we do it this way because we've been doing it for 3 decades. It doesn't work like that anymore. We've got to change it. That's the Kaizen mentality. So every day, part of our job is to work on ourselves. So we got to learn something new every day. We've got to be curious. We've got to ask why. We've got to be that, you can call it, annoying, insatiable child that we used to be, that was thirsting for knowledge. And, we used to be like that until it was beaten out of us, as it were. We need to read. Read 10 pages of a good book every day, I advocate.
And apparently everybody in your organization does that. That's part of the rituals of your organization, I was reading. Yes.
It is. I'm a really big reader. Now, I devour books. I like physical books, but again, we've had COVID. The cost of buying anything on Amazon, the cost of shipping is the cost of about 3 books. So physical books, I've got to go to electronic ones now, or audiobooks. So I do a lot of audiobooks.
I still prefer physical books.
Yeah, so do I.
But I understand the cost implications of that.
And going back to Kaizen, so Kaizen is that lifelong improvement. But the other thing linked to it is reflection, because we need, to consider what is going on. And so we can reconsider, what do we learn, what more do we need to learn, and as you already said, it's infinite. So it is linked to that infinite mindset, which is based on a growth mindset, or is linked to a growth mindset.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I experienced Kaizen on the supply chain. I experienced the flow of what Kaizen can do in the sort of manufacturing supply chain scenario. But I think it's interesting to apply it to your mind, and also to the discipline that comes from creating habits, because you can do it once, but unless you create habits, it's hard to create a system, an internal system that means that will be a sustainable change, which, and your book is full of practical proposals for that. Like you said before, lots of tools, things that have worked for you, things that haven't worked for you, other things that you've put together and, made the RIC model out of, that you're now sharing with us very generously. And I loved when you talk about purpose and acknowledgement, and I love the acknowledgement jar. And I was wondering if you could walk our listeners through that, for a very good reason. A lot of my clients and the people I work with and coach don't like journaling. And they don't, and if journaling doesn't work for you, there are other alternatives. And for me, this is one of them. So it would be great if you could share it with our listeners. I think it's a great idea.
Okay, so what you call it, the acknowledgement, I thought you called it the acknowledgement jar, is this was a way of building self-confidence. And so basically, one way to build self-confidence is to make a note of your achievements. Now, we could do that now, in the book I'll take you through, and in my masterclass I'll take you through, think of your achievements when you're in primary school or whatever, all that stuff, you got gold star or whatever you got. But on a more practical thing, on a day-to-day basis, whenever you've achieved something, write it down. Okay, and if you don't like journaling, as you said, write it down on a slip of paper, and then roll up that bit of paper and pop it into a jar. And then think of when another achievement happens, write that down, and also write it on a piece of paper, roll it up, pop it in the jar. Okay. and keep on doing that. And obviously the jar fills up, doesn't it? And when you have one of those days where you need a boost, you know, one of those darker days when the world is against us, you know, reach into that jar and pull one out. It's like a fortune cookie thing, you know, and just read it and go, oh, okay, that was one achievement, and that's a little boost. Okay, you know, a little a dose of dopamine, and you know, read another one and another one. Just keep reading them until you've had enough and you feel better. Okay, then roll them back up again, pop them back in the jar. And I have a few clients, and they literally got cupboard fulls. They got, well, not cupboard fulls. They got a cupboard full of them, and they do one for each year.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And they say, all right, well, can I have a bigger jar for this year? Let's see if I can do more. And you know, that's what some people do. I mean, I like how you say, you know, some of your clients, they don't like journaling, because that's the other way of doing it. You know, have a journal and you write it down, and then you open your journal. But you could say that that's in a list order. The jar is a very random thing. Okay. And another thing, actually, it just triggered something. I had one of my clients, and she did this exercise with her husband.
Interesting.
Okay? And when they achieve something together, like, and their achievement could just be a recognition of gratitude, like they helped one another, or they did something great together, they went on holiday. It doesn't matter what they did. It's a shared experience, or something they really remember about the other. They also put that on a scrap of paper, roll it up, put it in the jar. And so when they're having a little bit of friction, it's okay, let's sit down and let's have a look at the jar, and let's pull out a few things, and they can recall all the wonderful times that they have definitely had together. And that really helps get them over that road bump in their relationship.
And I like it because it's visual, and I'm quite a visual person, but I also, I mean, teams could do a lot with that idea, couldn't they? Because we've all been sat in teams at mid-year, or when budget review comes and they cut the budget for whatever reason, and it's not necessarily because you haven't achieved everything that you're meant to achieve. So it's quite nice, isn't it, as a you know, to acknowledge what we've done. And as humans, we need to be heard, seen, acknowledged, valued, don't we? And which brings me back to the castle. So understanding everything that's in the castle. I mean, your metaphor is very, we've looked at the different parts, but it's actually a holistic metaphor, isn't it? I mean, can I just look at one tower, Rick, or should I be constantly looking at the whole system?
You do need to, I mean, again, if you look at a castle, in my analogy, it's supposed to have these 8 buildings. It might be a different castle if it only had one of them.
Okay.
It might look a little bit, oh, I got one tower, where are the other 3?
Yeah.
You know, so that there are missing bits. So I think it is important to have them all. Now, there's another way of looking at the castle, okay, which I specifically have not mentioned in the book.
Oh, tell me. Tell me.
But coaches may see, you know, may use a different analogy, because I don't know anyone who's used a castle analogy before.
No, me neither.
Coaches use a life wheel. So what's a life wheel? It's a wheel, it's a round thing, and it has spokes, and each spoke is one aspect. Okay. Now, so if you look, you can look at the wheel of life, look at the life wheel. You can look at the castle of life if you want, but I'm not saying that. Okay, I don't want to have an argument about wheels.
No, all castles.
Okay. So I get, you know, I get the whole concept of the life wheel. I've done it so many times when I've been coached over the last don't know how many years. Okay, and every single time I did it, I had a problem with it. Okay, because the whole idea of that life wheel is you're scoring the different spokes, the different dimensions from maybe 0, which is the middle, okay, to 10, which is the rim. And obviously wheels around, that means everything must be 10. And I'm going, no, but I have a jaggedy wheel, so I've got a bumpy, wonky, terrible wheel. You know, that's why it doesn't run very well. Maybe that's why I'm out of balance. And even if I worked on all of those things, I don't want them all to be a 10, because some of them are less important to me. And I just had that problem. And that's also the way I think. It doesn't help that I'm a hyperachiever and a jaggedy wheel just does not compute.
Do it for you.
Okay, it doesn't do it for me. Okay, and actually, all right, so that's why I have a castle.
Okay,
and you know,
go on.
Yeah, unlike a castle, they're not all the same.
No,
and they're not all round. We have round towers and square ones. And so, going back to this anyway, in the Tower of Life Force, you know, we said it was herbs, the health, energy, rest, balance, and stress. I believe that the meaning of life is rooted in feeling well, thinking well, and doing well. Okay, so one of the purpose of the Tower of Life Force is to manage and take care of this life force energy, because it's not an endless supply.
No, clearly.
Okay, it's like a battery. It needs to be recharged, and since we're all unique, we each drain differently, and we each recharge differently. So balance is one part of the herbs, and it's really looking at the whole castle, being very, very holistic about it. And it's also important, balance is also important, because one person simply can't do everything. Okay, and we go back to that thing, choice. Choices have to be made. And some people strive for perfect balance. Let's have that perfectly round wheel. Let's have a 10 on everything. But as Voltaire said, perfect is the enemy of good.
Absolutely.
I mean, we know that you can't, you know, project management and all that, lean Kaizen, all of these things, perfection is the enemy of good. So the balance here I'm really talking about is not about work-life balance, which I disagree with, and that's a different story. I disagree with the terminology.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, you know, work-life, why not life-work? But
exactly.
You know, why either word? Anyway,
that's a whole different podcast.
It's not work-life, it's not life-work, it's not either word, it's just balance. Okay, so what I mean, keeping the different elements of the castle in balance. Okay, so if something is out of balance for us as an individual, so in your castle, if something is out of balance about it, it's going to drain us more than it should as compared to if it was in balance. So being out of balance is a contributor to stress. That can lead to a bit of anxiety. Then we're going to a downward spiral, and we can't sleep, we can't get rest, you know. Okay, so when we look at the castle, when we reflect on it, we need to sort of consider what needs attention. Okay, and we need to make choices to deal with that. And you mentioned before habits. So I do recommend starting with the Tower of Life Force, because if you haven't got any energy, you don't feel great, you can't do very much. Okay. We need to find those habits that will help us strengthen and improve the Tower of Life Force. You know, because we are looking at many different things there. Balance is, you know, that's reflection and seeing how things are going. But, you know, how is our health? You know, are we getting enough exercise? Are we eating well? How is our energy level? I mean, are we leaping out of bed in the morning and we have energy all the day, or are we going through our peaks and troughs during the day? Are we getting enough rest? You know, and we all recharge differently. And how are we coping with that stress, which we must have? We can't eliminate it. We must have. Okay, so that's what I'm really sort of looking at on the holistic side.
And I think particularly because you know, it's energy is not endless, as you say, and people react differently to stress, don't they? So what stresses one person won't stress another. Somebody's capacity for stress won't be the same as it, which is why I like the importance that you put on the inner keep around really understanding who I am, what I'm about, what triggers me, where I have strengths, where I have shadow sides. I think that's really important, and particularly important, and time is running, but I really would like to touch this. I really liked, in terms of navigating complexity, to bring it back to business a little bit, you know, pivoting when you have to in terms of uncertain times, and the reframing of VUCA, so volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, into transformational VUCA, which gives a different acronym. I would love it if you could just quickly walk our listeners through that, because I hear VUCA all the time, as does everyone. And it really put a different lens on it for me, Rick. So one, thank you for that. And two, how did you get to those words? And can you just walk us through that process a little bit?
Okay, let's go back to sort of VUCA. I think it's been sort of
overused.
It's been flogged to death.
Yeah.
It's actually been flogged to death, you know. So the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It yeah, I think why did I come up with it? I think it's because I think one of my coaches, whilst I was, you know, just prior to doing the book, started introducing VUCA leadership, and then VUCA leadership really started taking off. And I said, yeah, I mean, VUCA has been around since the 80s. It's a bit old, and as you said, it's a bit beaten up. It's a bit flogged to death, a bit like flogging a dead horse. So I thought we need to change it to something else, and that's why I thought I just got to change the acronym, and it's got to change to something else. So if you look at volatile, the first V, how do we overcome volatility? And one way to overcome it is to inspire vision. Okay, so when things are changing all around us, and oh no, what do we do now? If someone can shine a light on we're going over there, why we're going over there, and you fully embrace it, that removes the volatility, because now I can latch onto something. I guess like getting the compass out, we're going that way, we're going north. And so I can get alignment with that, and phew, that's better. The next one is being uncertain. That's the U of the VUCA. So we overcome uncertainty by creating understanding.
Yeah.
Okay. And we can create understanding by inspiring motivation, because at the end of the day, motivation is self-motivation. So I can't motivate you. I have to create the framework around you so you can self-motivate yourself. So to do that, I need to make you aware. I need to make you fully understand. And when you get it, and you already have that inspiring vision, okay, maybe now you got the no and the go, and you'll go. Okay. The C is the complex. Well, complexity, we can overcome that by driving clarity. Okay, so we can manage we have to manage the vision of where we're going. You know, we've inspired people, and we have to you know, help on the delivery of it. Okay, so yeah, they know we're going over there. They understand why, they've got the no and the go, but there's still going to be some road bumps. Okay. And we're going to have to keep fine-tuning and you know, course correcting and giving that greater clarity. And the final one is ambiguous. Okay, and to handle ambiguity, I'm using agility. Okay. So volatile turned into vision, uncertain turned into understanding, complex turned into clarity, and ambiguous turned into agility. Okay. And just coming up with 4 different words is already making us pause and think about it. And we need that space to sort of push the noise away to get that clarity and direction of what we need to do.
It's also sort of yes and words, though, isn't it? That they're quite positive words. I don't get scared when I hear vision. I don't feel fearful when I hear clarity, etc., etc. So I think it's a great framework, or should I say, this is what I read into it. It's a great framework for leaders when they talk about navigating complexity or what you're going to do with this VUCA world. Or it's, well, actually, I'm going to be my agent of change. I'm going to decide that I'm going to view it through a different lens. And I just love the sort of vision, understanding, clarity, agility. On that note, Rick, do you have a final call to action or recommendations for our listeners who are sitting here thinking, yeah, I need to do some work around how I think about the business environment today and how I create my hybrid model?
Sure. So listeners who are interested in continuing the conversation or learning more about me or exploring more insights from my journey, they can connect with me at my website.
Okay.
That's rickyvanovich.com. I'm also active on LinkedIn, and you can find me there. Just search my name, Rick Yvanovich.
Okay. I'll put all these in the show notes so that people can find you.
I believe there's actually only one person on the planet with that name.
Really?
Seriously,
wow,
Google me.
No, not many people can say that. Wow.
No, I mean, I think just under 7 billion other people can't say that. Yeah, my kids have got unique names as well, so I made them all unique.
Wow, brilliant.
So if you want a deeper dive into my perspectives, of course, go read Business as Unusual or read one of my other books, and that will give you more insight into my beliefs and experiences, and yeah, hopefully you will get some valuable insights. Now, as we close, I want to leave everybody with another thought, or one more thought. We are not just participants in this ever-changing business as unusual world. We are architects, shaping the course of our lives, our careers, and the world around us. So I encourage all you listeners to embrace change, define it rather than just adapt to it. Be the catalyst in your own business as unusual world. And the transformation starts with you. And I'm eager to hear about your journeys. So go and build your castle.
Excellent. I'm going to leave our listeners with that they are architects of their own castle. Rick, thank you so much for coming and sharing your experience, your insights, your stories, and more about your book. I will put it all in the show notes so that people can find, one, your website, and two, where to get hold of your book. Thanks for a great conversation.
Okay, Susie, I'd like to express my gratitude to you for having me on your podcast today.
Pleasure.
It's really been a fascinating conversation. I really enjoyed it. And I hope your listeners have enjoyed it as much as I have. And to your listeners again, I really appreciate taking the time to listen to this podcast. And I look forward to hearing from some of you and learning from your experiences and perhaps sharing in another future in-depth conversation or a discussion. So thank you again, Susie. Thank you, listeners, for this wonderful exchange. Until next time.
Excellent. Thank you, Rick.